Hello, everybody. This is Buddy in Midland. What I want to talk about today is a huge prostitution bust that happened in this area back in 2004. 61 arrested, and these were high profile people that were arrested, and so. I'm going to just start right in on my Facebook there, and I posted about it this morning. 61 arrested in prostitution bust. I was asked, how did this was more this morning? I was asked, how did Sheriff Candidate Joe Lozano know that the late Sheriff Gary Painter used to hang out in the underground homes in Midland? And I said maybe it was because prostitution was going on down there, and Joe was arrested in the famous prostitution bust in Odessa. They made a movie about that, and so that's what made me think about it. I was asked that question. That's a real popular movie, actually, top 5 movie there, Sheriff Painter's Hideout, where a sheriff candidate during an election tells me over the phone on secret recorded message or a phone call that our previous sheriff Painter used to hang out in the underground homes down here, and so that was huge news that was hidden from the public by the press. So I went and looked this up. This news story is posted in 2004, the Odessa American, and this is just a clip of it. I'm going to read a part of it to give you an idea how big this was. 61 area residents, including prominent attorneys, business owners, and a senior editor for the Odessa American, slogged through the rain to turn themselves in for prostitution investigation. Okay, warrants still remain. All 74 people total. Investigation focused on activities at the Heel and Touch massage parlor. I want to make a point of massage parlor because I think massage is the code word for prostitution. Okay, that was on Dixie and Odessa, and then there's Mid Odessa Therapy too. Among those charged is attorney and community volunteer Scott Tidwell. Okay, Lee Haddon was a deputy district attorney. Let that sink in. Do you think that affected any cases he was on? Or maybe they had tapes of him. And they could blackmail him, whatever. And that's always goes along with prostitution is all the other crimes, organized crime, blackmail, extortion, burglary, theft, murder, assault, drug use. It's organized crime. Other warrants filed Tuesday, 54 were from Odessa. 3 women were madams, 11 were Midlanders, and 8 were from other communities, Lamesa, Monahans, Robert Lee, Seminole, and Andrews. Okay, one of the warrants was for Artesia. That's interesting too, because the woman on the recorded phone call told me about the 4 underground homes. Said one of the key players with the underground homes was a wealthy guy that lived in a town near Hobbs that started with an A. And I've long believed that was Artesia, New Mexico. That's where I created a Facebook post called Artesia Suspects. 4 hours later, Vice President Pence announced he was traveling to Artesia. I have a video about that. Another one of my much watched videos. This one's real interesting. Gene Powell Jr., assisting managing editor for the Odessa American. And and if I haven't, pointed out over and over again that our press in the local area has been covering up crimes and hiding evidence from the public, could it be that we had some people in the press that are actually involved in the crimes? That isn't that interesting? Prominent rancher James Buzz Ratliff Hurth, Vince Vines, owner Odessa Insurance Company, Sidney Ingram, owner M&M Elevator. This was all back in 2004. Okay, and then a school board member. Can you imagine a school board member, Tommy Salmon Sr.? Okay, and so here's the article there. You can go look it up. The Odessa American, 61 arrested. That's what I just quoted from or read from. And then there was another article in the Odessa American, and it listed the names of the people, and I'm not going to read them all for you. To you, Anderson, Bishop, Brindley, Burchett, Campbell, Carrillo, and we go, and you can read them yourself who they are. But what I wanted to show you here, as we look through all these names, these are people that were busted in this huge prostitution bust. And we should see it here in a minute. And we didn't. It's Joe Lozano. He's the sheriff candidate. He's got it there. He does right there. Joe Lozano. He was running for Midland Sheriff. That's who I contacted. He's the one that told me that Painter used to hang out in the underground homes here. Okay, and so that's what reminded me of this case. And then also, the Texas Monthly did an article on it in January 2005. She had brains, a body, and ability to make men love her. How a 22-year-old former cheerleader discovered prostitution, helped put 68 high-profile Johns in handcuffs, and brought Odessa to its knees. And then there is even a video on it here, and we don't want to watch the commercials there, but it's called The Client List. That's the trailer. You can go watch it. They made a movie out of this prostitution bust because it was so famous. So many people, so many important people, district attorney, people who work for the press. They had all the bases covered. That's kind of what I've been saying has been going on in the crimes and underground facility here. They got all the bases covered, Earlier this year, we had an election in Midland County for sheriff after longtime Sheriff Painter died. And I was contacting each of the candidates and telling them my incredible fact-filled story about being ambushed and shot by somebody under my home 2 weeks after reporting a suspected tunnel to the DEA. And now multiple people have said that underground homes are here. It's believed that's where the oil show parties were held. I was secretly recording Sheriff Candidate Joe Lozano when he tells me that the underground homes was the hideout for Sheriff Painter. I made this into a video which has had over 25,000 views, but our press hid it from the public during their election. That's a perfect example of what's going on around here with the public being deceived and elections are being manipulated. So there's Sheriff Painter's hideout. That's another YouTube video. And on this right here, I have in the description at 1441. See if we can find this real quick. There's 1435.
And of course that.
Buddy, that was Painter's hideout thing.
That was Painter's hideout, and so that was the whole point of that. Now, like I said, that's huge news. That was one more of the many people confirming that these underground homes are here, and that they're believed to be connected with multiple murders, oil show parties, etc. And he was running for sheriff. Think how big that is. During the week of the 2010 oil show party, my friend would leave my home and be at the location of the party where the young girl was murdered at, and she told me that high-level police were there. I believe that those parties were going on in the $1 million underground homes, and it's suspected that Sheriff Painter was one of the high-level police that she was afraid of. I recently named her Angie Mungia. I'd hoped, I gave her plenty of time to go forward and tell her story to law enforcement, and before I named her, many years. But during the time when this was going on, she's leaving my house at the party in 5 minutes. And that's when that week she told me about that young girl being murdered. She was dead serious. I believed her 100% then. I believe it now. I know it happened. This was before I even reported my first crime here at my home. She told me about that girl being murdered at that oil show party. It was before I knew about the underground homes, okay? I just knew it was within 5 minutes of my home, okay? Now I believe it was in the underground homes where it happened at. She was afraid to report that murder and told me high-level police were there. And the Lozano told me that Painter used to hang out in the underground facilities. That's why I'm wondering if Painter wasn't at the oil show parties and other law enforcement. Based on evidence found, I believe that the infamous 2010 oil show parties where the young girl was murdered at when she refused to prostitute was in the 4 3-bedroom underground homes that I've been told about, and maybe the one in my backyard. It looks like they were parking in the Home Depot parking lot and then coming back to my home via that tunnel seen on Google Maps. This is a Google Earth picture, and you can see here, I'm zoom in to this, the Fair Circle cul-de-sac. This is my home right here. It's believed the last homeowner died the week before the 2008 oil show started. I'm ambushed and shot right here with my phone lines cut inside my home. Somebody under my home shoots me. It's believed there's an underground home in the backyard based on Google Maps. And if you look up here, you can see where the color here, it looks like the ground was cut, a ditch was cut aimed directly at my house, coming from Home Depot, going directly towards my house. Okay, I mean, that's easy to see, right? That's what I showed Homeland Security last year, okay? The parking lot here, I'm showing the cars, and there was a clerk at Home Depot that told me, just out of the blue, says if you see a lot of cars in the parking lot late at night, it's because we're stalking. I hadn't seen that and thought about it. She just blurted that out like it was a clue. But it makes sense that a international oil show is going to have a lot of people at their parties, and they're going to need a lot of parking, and they're going to need an excuse. And I think that was the excuse. We're stalking, and they were going underground somewhere, and they were coming back via this tunnel, and here was underground homes, and then that in 2010, it looks like that young girl didn't want to prostitute, so they killed her. And that's, I guess, common for them sex traffickers and human trafficking. It's called forced prostitution, is what it's called. And it looks like there is one of the 4 3-bedroom underground homes that was used for the oil show parties a half block away. I was told that I need to reword that, but it says this screen here shows Google Maps. Look at my address, 3802 Fair Circle, maps.google.com. On the block screen, you see a large facility in my backyard. Okay, you go to the satellite screen and it's not there. You can't see it from above ground. I was told that there was 4 3-bedroom underground homes, and multiple people said underground facilities are here. I believe that's one of them. Okay, and so then also other evidence. A woman was recorded telling me there were underground homes. Rhonda Denman Rogers said underground homes a half block away. Layla O'Brien said that she worked on the Safe House project, was $7.35 million, finished in 1987. I have documentation on that. And then Sheriff Candidate I recorded, Joe Lozano. And so I believe that's maybe where that little girl was murdered at. Okay. And then I was told that a half block away was an underground facility, so I wondered if it was in this empty lot next to the water well. Okay. That home had a brick mortar problem just like mine, and my neighbor has a water well next to my fence. Okay, around my corner out of the cul-de-sac, Whittle Way right here, there's an empty lot, and this lot has a water well in it, and the home next to it has a mortar problem just like my home had a mortar problem. My home has a water well right next to it in the neighbor's yard. Okay, so I wondered if the half block away this is not where one of the other underground homes were at that Rhonda Denman Rogers was talking about. And I think the owner of this home is a safety guy that works for Concho Oil Company. And so maybe that's one of the underground homes. Maybe that was where the oil show parties were also being held. Last year, I provided evidence to Homeland Security, which I thought would solve multiple murders, stop this crime ring, and I personally showed them where I believe the human trafficking murder tunnel was at. 2 weeks later, the ground was dug up and concrete was poured. I already showed you. I provided them that Google Earth map. It's real easy to see where that tunnel was cut, right? And then after I show Homeland and provide them this evidence that could solve these multiple murders, the ground's dug up and concrete is being poured. I was right there with Homeland Security 2 weeks before that video was made, And I'm sure that was mighty embarrassing to them, because it looks like they got caught trying to tamper with evidence in capital murder. A couple of weeks after I made this video of concrete being poured, U.S. Congressman Mike Conaway announced that he was retiring. Come to find out, his late brother-in-law used to live across the street from my home. Okay, and here, John Lejeune, and this is his obituary here. He died in 2008, I believe, before I moved here. His sister was Suzanne Conaway, the wife of Mike Conaway. Okay, they have another sibling named Marsu Wilson, and I'm making a point of that because the current owner of that home is William Wilson. So I'm asking if Marsu Wilson is related to William Wilson, and if this home across the street from my home is still in the Conaway family, and if that home has underground access, or did have underground access, or they have any kind of connection back to the underground facilities used for the oil show parties, etc. And the other thing was the deed history for my home. Here you can see where Mike Lawhon died the week before the 2008 oil show started. This home was sold to him by Brandy Merrill, and she married Daniel Price, and she lived in the Conaway home. When I moved into my home here, transferred in as the next unsuspecting victim, Brandy Merrill and Daniel Price lived here at the Conaway home, and when I moved in here, okay, they moved out shortly before I was ambushed and shot with my phone lines cut. And so that's the question is asked if Conaway retired 3 weeks after the concrete was poured, and it was because he has some knowledge or connection to the underground homes or his family or et cetera. You know, they're very fair questions to ask. The press should be asking it. 3 months after concrete was poured to cover up the suspected Capitol murders, the Secretary of Homeland Security and Secretary of Energy both resigned in the same week. I believe it was because of the Oil Show Party murder and its cover-up in Midland, Texas. Okay, and I'm going to blow this up. I've showed this before. Secretary of Homeland Security Kevin McClellan resigns on October 11, 2019. Remember, I was behind the Home Depot store on July 2nd with Homeland Security Agent Paul. July 17th, they were digging up the ground pouring concrete. Okay, Secretary of Energy Rick Perry resigns October 17th, and that was 6 days after Secretary of Homeland resigns. You know, and you can see the connection with oil show parties, underground oil show parties. The girl gets murdered. They don't, you know, think what it does to their stock if the public finds out, and how that might be connected to the Secretary of Energy with oil companies. I bet he has a lot of contact with oil companies. You know, and he was also governor of Texas when I was ambushed and shot in my home. I got emails where I was sending him emails, and he was also governor when Mike Lawhon died and when the little girl at the oil show party died. The previous owner of my home, Mike Lawhon, died the week before the 2008 oil show started, with conflicting reports of where he died at. A former neighbor, Marilyn DeLuigi, told me twice that he died in my home, which was confirmed by the Odessa American on their second death notice they posted. On the first one, they said that she died in Fort Worth, but then changed it 4 days later. Interestingly, the one saying Fort Worth was recently deleted by them. Okay, and so here, a neighbor, Marilyn DeLucia, used to live in this cul-de-sac. She told me twice Mike died in my house. And then she told me somebody else died here first. Another guy asked me if I knew the names of the 4 people who had been murdered, died in my house. Aaron Peckover. But anyway, Mike dies on October 12, 2008. The Odessa American posts a death notice for him on the 14th, saying he died in Fort Worth. 4 days later, they posted a second death notice on October 18th right there and say he died at his residence. So they revised the death notice and changed the location of death 4 days later. And, you know, and why? You know, I think the obvious reason is because Mike did die in Midland. He was taken to Fort Worth, you know, because his death certificate says that he died in Fort Worth. And then, so this was, both of them were online, posted at the same time for 12 years. I made videos about them, print screens, everything. And then all of a sudden, within the last 2 or 3 months, the Odessa American deletes this one saying he died in Fort Worth. Now this is the only one you can find. So if you Google Odessa American, Michael Don Lawhon, then this is the only one you're going to see. And that was a change that happened just within the last couple months. So maybe something's going on, or maybe it's just more cover up, you know, and because that's another suspected capital murder. Also interesting is that the second person seen arriving in my home after I survived a murder attempt, crawled out and left, was the late Sheriff Deputy Mike Naylor, who worked for Gary Painter. I've long suspected that he was under my home when I was shot, and I found evidence showing that officers Davis, Dickey, Chatwell, Angel, and Hale came into my home from a now removed underground trapdoor entrance the ex-wife had told me about and I had been shot from. And so this first list of names was the 11 secret police that had been caught on camera that I had to offer a reward and paid to get them identified. Empire Private Investigation identified them in 2018, 6 years later. You know, notice that 2 of them are dead. Naylor's one of them. Okay, and then Simpson, that was alleged to murder his wife, killed himself 2 months after Naylor died. Okay, first guy that shows up at my house was a sheriff from a whole different county. You know, that ain't never been explained. You know, and then here this list is I find out in 2019, 7 years later, there was a police report all along that had been illegally withheld. It had been subpoenaed in 2013 and they didn't turn it over. And I think the reason is because it had incriminating evidence on it. And the most incriminating thing is it showed them 5 officers were time-stamped to being at or in my home, and they wasn't seen arriving on the cameras that saw Woodward and Naylor 4 minutes earlier. That's what told me they came in from the underground entrance that I'd been shot from, and the ex-wife had told me about. And then this was the second entry by police 3 days later. I did get a report on it, but you notice this short name list, the only person in common on all of them was Rosie Rodriguez, and she's a main player, as she's a lifelong friend of the ex-wife's alleged to be involved in the shooting, and she met me at the 7-Eleven when I crawled out and said she wasn't even there. April Chandler lied and said she met me there, So these are people that law enforcement can ask about these capital murders and these underground oil show parties. Okay. Jessica told me there has been more than one girl that was raped or murdered if they didn't do what they wanted her to do, and she has been to many oil shows, okay? That's, once again, that's not Buddy said, Jessica said, okay? I got a print screen of it. She says, I've been to 2,000 oil shows, and I'll tell you what, there's more than just one that was murdered or raped because she didn't do whatever they wanted her to do. She goes on to tell me about this Officer Joe Commander who recently retired from the Odessa police department. I think it was because of what's going on here in my videos, because I mentioned his name many times before. And then she's talking about how they were trying to get them to snitch on somebody else and threaten to take their children away. And I think that's what they were trying to, what corrupt police were doing, trying for this human trafficking, getting these young girls, young mothers to prostitute themselves and make money off of them, and by saying, if you don't, then we're going to take your kids away. And what are you going to do? Or you think you can call News West 9? You think they're going to report your story? You think KMID is going to report your story just because you have evidence and it's important to the public? Do you think the Midland Reporter Telegram is going to report your story? What are you going to do about it? You need to prostitute or die, and I think that's what happened to that little girl who was murdered at the oil show party. She had a choice. You either do it or you die. You don't got, who else she can go to? Unsolved murder. The remains of a young girl aged 14 to 21 were found outside of Midland, 2013. It seemed like nobody's trying to solve this murder. Could the reason be that it's the girl that my friend told me about being murdered at the 2010 oil show party that had high-level police there? There's been one news story in 7 years, and this was a 14 to 21-year-old girl that's believed to have been murdered. Her remains are found in 2013. My friend, like I said, told me about a young girl murdered. Angie Mungia was my friend. Told me about a young girl murdered. She was there, heard her crying, and the girl didn't want to prostitute, didn't wake up. They murdered that girl. I bet they carried her out the tunnels that now have concrete in them thanks to Homeland Security. So maybe law enforcement can talk to Agent Paul and see what he knows about that capital murder and covering up and tampering with evidence, And so plenty of people that we can, law enforcement can talk to solve this unsolved murder. They can talk to them police officers that showed up at my house. Now, this is a Google Maps search for massage in Midland. Remember I said that earlier. This whole started with how does Lozano know painters hanging out underground facilities? Well, he got busted in a big prostitution bust, and it was a massage parlor. And remember what I said, massage is a key word for prostitution. All them red dots, I just did a search on Google Maps for massage, okay? They're all over the place. Every shopping center, and sometimes they don't call them massage. They call them, spas, and I didn't search for spa. This is here in Odessa. Every one of them red dots is here in the city of Odessa. These are massage parlors, and so that's a lot of massaging going on, and I think every once in a while they get the token prostitution bust, and there's probably somebody that's not paying, their kickback money or whatever. I don't know, but anyways, 61 people busted, famous prostitution bust in Odessa. I've even wondered, did they build this underground facility and they moved it underground, and and because this embarrassed the city. Talk to you later.